Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back, episode 191. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. I am Nick Morawski, and you can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on YouTube. We've got our own channel, so just search Good Guys Talk Back, subscribe, pass it along. We are on Twitter at Good Guys TB, and we've got a Facebook fan page. A lot to get to since the last time we talked, not only White Sox, but what's happening in these MLB playoffs. To break everything down with me, my co-host, longtime friend, diehard Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Hey, buddy. It's good to talk to you. And, it's one of the most wonderful times of the year. It's rumor season. When you don't get in the playoffs very often or win too much, it's rumors are what we have to go off of. And though we can't do much in terms of signing people or trading things right now, when you still got baseball to be played for the teams that are still alive, we can still speculate and look at things, and we hear rumors, and there's some real stuff out there, and there's some fake stuff out there.
Yeah. There are rumors, lies, hearsay, make-em-ups. Some people might use that term, fake news. There's a lot of stuff flying at you, and if you're not on social media, God bless you, because it could be just a problematic place. But if you are, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and namely Twitter. But I'm sure it's all over the place. There are accounts, there are folks that really are passionate about their takes. They feel like they have got an inside track on what is going to happen with the White Sox, personnel-wise, players, organization. And over the last few years, when we're in this off-season period, this rumor season, it's accounts that have a food kind of name to it, or a parody maybe that's Chicago related or White Sox related. There have been a lot of them along the lines of Portillo's, Al's Cheesy Beef. There's been several others that feel like they have the inside track. And of course, there are rumors from other folks too. You've got the Bob Nightingale stuff and the John Heyman and Bruce Levine talking about what he's talking about. So we're going to try to break some of these rumors down, what we've heard, Pat, you and I, and maybe other folks listening have heard these as well, and how they apply to the Sox. Definitely want to talk MLB playoffs with you. It's been wild, and we've got a couple teams in the NLCS that have players that should be on the White Sox right now, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that too. But and of course, the Sox managerial search, new names constantly popping up. So big rumors. Is there something, Pat, that you have heard recently that was you almost had to just kind of almost either turn the phone off or just laugh out loud because it was so outrageous?
Well, it's anything that's a trade, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
who are the untouchables? When people talk about, well, this person can be moved and that person can be moved, and whenever I hear a Vaughn mentioned in a trade, I don't know if that's people just grasping, like maybe they're going to hold on to Jose. I just think it's a foregone conclusion that that's kind of going to be done, and he's going to move on. Whether it's with the Cubs, which is a new rumor that's popped up. That was Bruce Levine who kind of talked about that on the Score the other day, and linking the Cubs as being interested. But a lot of teams can be interested in things. Nick, it doesn't mean anything is really serious, and if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. But that's the most recent one, and actually it sparked a not a heated, but an interesting text exchange with some folks I used to work with. I'm on a text chain with about 5 different guys, and that popped up, right? And that was
The Jose Abreu to the north
Jose
side?
Abreu to the Cubs, and oh my goodness, how could this be? One, I don't believe, my stance nowadays. It's unless it comes from Bob Nightingale or John Heyman, I don't really believe it. It's like it's not those, they're not real. Any of these other things that come out are just not real. I guess you could believe some of the local guys. Bruce is a very equitable and someone you would listen to, a Jesse Rogers, for ESPN 1000, those types of guys, but they very rarely get the actual inside scoop, and that. So anyway, going back to this text exchange, I just I try and stay as level headed as humanly possible, which is hard. But most guys, when they move on to other things, are very rarely who they used to be. They're usually a former shell of themselves, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And most great players finish their careers in other jerseys. Now, I started to think about Frank Thomas, right? Because Frank finished his career in both Toronto and Oakland, and kind of went back and forth between the two teams. He actually had a pretty good career post White Sox, okay, and even Mark Burley to an extent. Look at those guys that have gone, but a lot of guys just, whether it's baseball or football or basketball or hockey, when they go to different teams, they just don't live up to it. So I guess that was the one that really sparked my
Does
interest.
that get your blood boiling hearing that Jose Abreu could be wearing a Cubs jersey?
Not really, not really, Nick. I mean, if he does, he does. And I'm sure then that'll spark some thanks White Sox once he does something, good for the Cubs, if that comes to fruition. But, uh, you know, I just
But it
don't
wasn't a
know.
trade. I mean, Jose
It's
Abreu is
not a
free to
trade.
is going to be free to sign with whatever team that he
Right.
wants to sign with.
Exactly. And I wish him nothing but the best, unless, or except for those times when he faces the White Sox. So it doesn't get my blood boiling in any way, shape, or form. Does it you? I mean, I know you, as you're probably even a bigger fan of Jose Abreu than I am. And I know where your love lies for the North Side team is where it resides for me.
Ugh.
But how does it make you feel? Where does your
You
stomach?
know, I think if it was a trade, I think I might feel a little bit differently. And if yes, after Paul Konerko retired and Jose Abreu kind of picked that baton up, so to speak, and took over for Paulie, who took over for Frank at first base. Just the way that Abreu has carried himself and what he has meant to the franchise during some tough years, and he has always been that reliable player. What he's done for the community, mentoring players that have now come through the organization. He's everything you want, and it pains me to think about Jose Abreu in a different uniform, especially a Chicago Cubs uniform. But I also am the biggest fan of the front of the jersey than the back of the jersey. Like, I
Yeah.
am not going to switch allegiances over a player leaving. Like, that's business. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is business. It doesn't make it easier, but I can, it doesn't tear me apart so much. And then I even think about like Rodon. Like, if
Hmm.
Rodon, goes to the Twins or goes to the Cubs, or or Abreu goes to the Guardians, or or the Twins, or it's horrible to think about it, but I'm not going to like I don't. I'm not going to quit on the White Sox
Yeah.
because they didn't bring Jose Abreu back. I get the path of why that's probably not going to happen.
So for me, and you tell me how you feel about it. For me, I feel like the managerial rumors and who they're interviewing is more interesting right now, because you can actually make something like that happen. Like, they can go out and hire a manager at some point. But a lot of these players and moves and those types of rumors, those are kind of things that are going to take care of themselves after the World Series. Right? So why do we even
Yeah.
start to worry about that now? I guess
Well,
I'm
I
more interested
think
in the manager stuff.
I am interested in the managerial stuff too, and but the same accounts that will create the player rumors will also create smoke with the managerial search for the
Yeah.
most part.
And I can't remember who it was, but somebody had tweeted, one of these, fake Twitter handles tweeted that, it's Ozzie Guillen and he'll be announced later this week. And that was a week and a half ago or whatever it was. So those are the
Well,
ones I
and if
find
you
that are
get
hilarious.
questioned, if somebody gets questioned, it's easy to say like, well, I've got inside sources and they've been right on things in the past, and that's where I'm going. Like, it's clickbait, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
all want to have an inside angle. We all want to feel like we have got a connection, to what's going on inside, and that's where people are getting their followers.
Yeah.
Like, they get the likes, they get the retweets because I've got insight on this. I'm going to break it first, and you're going to hear it from me. And I'm someone that you can trust because and I get that. And we're all starved for information. We all are, especially as Sox fans, when there is no actual baseball going on right now. And the Sox have a lot of question marks coming up this offseason from the
Mhm.
manager down. I mean, coaching staff, I would assume, and also players. And with Hans saying that money is not going to be thrown at problems, which has never been an issue for the Sox. Have you ever known the Sox to be like, oh, we're just going to throw money at the issue? Like, and for Han to say, like, it's not going to be one of those years, folks. Like, well, has it ever been? Okay. So it's trade season. And that's where I think a lot of this stuff comes, Cease is untouchable, Vaughn is untouchable, but there are teams that are asking for Vaughn, and this is what we could get back for them. Don't be surprised if Giolito gets traded. And then you hear the Tim Anderson stuff of, well, he could be gone too. It's like, I mean, that creates that creates a hysteria that is almost not necessary.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to go back to what you mentioned, with Rick Hahn talking about we're not going to throw money at the problem. And because if you reverse it, right, we had talked about, we're in episode 191 of Good Guys Talk Back. I wasn't
Yeah,
here when this show first started,
sure.
but I was a listener. I was a
Mhm.
P1 of this show, and I weaseled my way into being your co-host eventually. And that's where we go back to about 4 years ago at this time when Hans said the money will be spent or thereabouts. So do you think the comment of we're not going to throw money at the problem is to kind of hedge his bets, like going back and saying, I said this once and the money will be spent, and it's been thrown back in my face ever since. Now I'm gonna go a different route and say this, and maybe have a move where I can actually spend money, and then I look better because I said it this way this time.
That is a valid point. I feel like Han has shown his cards over the last few years in ways that were very unconventional. Like that's something you usually don't do, and it came back to bite him. And I think you're obviously referring to the Harper Machado situation, and you're right. This podcast, Good Guys Talk Back, is going to be coming up on the beginning of season 5, believe it or not, when the winter meetings usually begin, which is early December. And our first few episodes, going way, way back, were all about this Machado Harper situation, that the Sox were not only going to be in on one of them, they were going to be in on both of them. And that
Mhm.
opened up the whole, glove gate, look at the color of Manny Machado's gloves, and is he wearing a White Sox hat in a certain video? And Machado and Harper both met with the Sox, and we can explore that if we want, in a little bit of what went wrong, but it's sometimes just so frustrating. I think that the Sox have financial issues. Like there are some extensions that are kind of starting to hit in their years here coming up in their third or fourth year, whatever it is. The Sox have always been a team that is so conservative. They
Mhm.
haven't given out a $100 million contract to a player, and they're one of the small few in all of baseball that is on that list. They don't pay for pitching. They just don't go big with contracts. So money is spent in like bizarre little ways that when you look back at it, you're like, oh man, you parsed it up, but how you issued it
Yeah.
is frustrating to really
Yeah.
stomach. And you look at last year as a perfect example with going after bullpens and the Garcia stuff. But I don't know. Maybe it's an opposite approach to go back to your original question. Maybe Han threw that out there early to kind of steer folks in a different direction, or maybe Han is truly trying to be honest and saying, I'm not going to get your expectations up. Like we are not going to spend money. It's going to be through trades. And, I've tried to be the idealistic, ask me after the parade. It's multiple championships. And that has come back to
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
in a major way. So, yeah, I think I don't expect big contracts, Pat. And,
Yeah.
and you and I and any Sox fan that's of a certain age get that. Like
Mhm.
this is a fun time of year, rumor season, hypotheticals, hearsay, because you do in a way you kind of want to believe, right? There's a
Mhm.
small slice of you that's like, well, what if it does happen?
Yeah.
And but if you've been a fan for a certain amount of time, years, you know what the reality really is.
Yeah, and it's fun for us as fans to talk about. It's great content, and especially when you hear things like and people that you trust in the media that say, "Oh, this team is linked," or there's a list of, "Oh, here's the four that I'm hearing that it could
Sure.
be," and if your team is mentioned as one of those four, that's fun, and it brings me back to another term that's been thrown around as we've had a seat at the table.
Mm,
The Sox have had a seat at the table. A lot of these things, so we've heard. So I'm deeming this upcoming series between, and I know it's between the two teams, but between Harper and Machado as the seat at the table series. That's what's coming up. That's what we have to look forward to, and what could have been. Now, I don't think there was really any realistic chance that they would have gotten both of these players. But think about, I think it's more about, and again, I would love to have both of them. Don't get me wrong, but I think it would have been great to have Bryce Harper in a White Sox uniform. That's the one I long for the most because we keep talking about it. We're still here. We're back here again at right field, and we're back here again about left-handed power. It was talked about. I just got around to reading Scott Merkin's little, what is his journal or whatever he comes
mhm.
out with on a weekly basis.
Sure.
This Scott Merkin
Yeah.
journal,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like the Wonder Years is happening right before my eyes.
Great
And
timely reference.
and yeah, and everybody knows who that is. Uh, and again, here it pops up. They need left-handed power. Well, there was your left-handed power, and it was there to be signed, and it was there to lock up a guy for 10 years, and you could have forgotten about right field for a long time.
Yeah.
And how great would have that been for this lineup? Again, a lineup that could never get on the field together anyway. But it would have been nice to have that position locked up for 10 years and just put it away, set it and forget it.
Yeah, I mean, I again, ticket sales I think only goes so far. Merchandise that would have gone through the roof. It's the advertising, the TV deals and stuff like that, and what that could have done. It would have brought, and I think it would have brought other players to the
Mhm.
White Sox, and it definitely would have brought a whole new generation of fans. But yeah, I've been thinking about that quite a bit. Now that the NLCS is set, Machado, Harper, and both of them were in the building. Both of them had meetings with the White Sox way back when. The Machado thing has been so sliced and diced about the money, and Kenny Williams and the White Sox organization will stand by their offer, but early day one it was always you knew what Machado's camp wanted.
Mhm.
You didn't play their game. You played the Jerry Reinsdorf game, and the fact that you weren't going to go where they wanted. I know the White Sox deal was incentive laced and it might have been more lucrative, what have you, but Machado wanted the guaranteed money. He wanted a certain number and you weren't willing to go there. You didn't want to do it that way. You tried to do it your way and it failed. It was a waste of time. It
Yeah.
was sad, really, really sad. You knew the game from the beginning and
Yeah.
it wasn't played. The Harper thing, boy, I don't know how that one got screwed up. Because there have been video and quotes and stuff that have come out over the years now of Harper saying, "Hey, I thought we had a great conversation. I thought I was going to fit in perfectly. Abreu was going to hit behind me. I love the South Side vibe, the culture. They're going to pack that place, the gritty blue collar way. I want to be there. I want to bring a
Mhm.
championship to this club." Reading those quotes,
Yeah.
it just rips your heart out because
Yeah.
he was my guy, like you said, answers the lefty power bat, your right fielder. He fit in perfectly. Just
Yeah.
you just the Harper vibe would have
Mhm.
been outstanding.
Well, and I want to go back to what you're talking about with the contract type of stuff. I mean, that way that you're talking about, the Jerry way, works really well for guys that you're trying to lock up early, which the Sox have done really well. Like the
Yeah.
young guys, the
Oh yeah.
young talent that you have, that you can talk about. Okay, this is what we're going to do, and it will give you the security now, and it's this long term team friendly deal that works well for a certain type of player. But you can't be doing that kind of stuff with high profile free agents. It doesn't work. They want to use the
They
same
know their
tactics.
value, and they've
Yeah.
got people in their ears
Yeah.
telling them,
Mhm.
this is what you're worth. Absolutely, I agree.
So it's unfortunate they can't be diverse enough and agile enough to know what they need to do to get the job done with free agents. And quite frankly, the Reinsdorf led teams have not done really well with high profile free agents on either their basketball team or their baseball team. So it's unfortunate. That's probably going to be the way it continues to go for the Southsiders. We've got to find a different way to get done. Now, there is more than one way to skin a cat, as we've seen from the Guardians, who are
Mhm.
currently playing in the against the Yankees in the playoffs and doing quite well for themselves. So it doesn't mean that just because you sign someone to a high price deal does not guarantee you anything, but it certainly helps, and it can help, and it can get you from point A to point B quicker than trying to really rebuild a farm system.
Sure. Look at what happened to the Dodgers.
Mhm.
It's and hey, and the Padres have spent a lot of money, and they
Yeah.
have talent as well. But the Dodgers winning the amount of games that they won, and they look just like without weakness, and they're bounced, and that's how it goes. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the absurdity sometimes of the MLB playoffs, which I kind of love.
Yeah.
It hurts and it stings of like, what was this 162 games for? This marathon, when the Dodgers, as our friend Herb Lawrence said, the Dodgers played 4 more games than the White Sox,
Yeah.
this season.
I think that's true if you're just looking at math, but at the end of the day, I mean, there's quite a difference. There's
Oh, I
there's a
know, I know.
chasm of a difference between the Dodgers and the White
Sure.
Sox right now, and I would much rather be where the Dodgers are at than where our club currently is. So I
Well,
don't know if I agree. I saw that a lot too. I saw signs about that, especially Northside fans giving it to the Cardinals about, well, the Cardinals played, 3 more games than the Cubs. Big deal. Well, yeah, I think that's a weak-minded
are
way
you
to
just
look at
saying that
things.
I'm just bitter and jealous
No,
of a
I'm not.
well-run organization?
Well, maybe
You
you are.
can. That's fine.
Well, you have been a bitter person for a long, long time.
Jaded, just angry,
Yes, yes.
angry at what this organization has done to me and my fandom. This is the time of year to look at how these teams were constructed. How did they get to where they are? And it is pretty apparent with the San Diego Padres and with the Phillies. You have got an owner in Philadelphia that a few years ago just said, I have got more money than I know what to do with. I
Mhm.
want championships. And he also said, we're going to spend stupid money during that Machado Harper, off season. And gosh, just to have an owner go on record and saying something like that, could you ever imagine Reinsdorf even opening up his mouth or putting pen to paper and putting something out there publicly about what he plans on doing? That's ridiculous.
And it seems like Jerry has gotten even more and more secluded, and
Hmm.
in this, as he's gotten older and older, I feel like he's turned into Mr. Burns when he owned the casino back in the Simpsons days. Like, his fingernails are like, 10 inches long, and his
Yeah.
hair's down to his shoulders, and he's wearing Kleenex boxes on his feet. You think that's the case?
It could very well be. Who was the Smithers, though? Is Kenny Williams the
Again,
Smithers?
well, maybe. And
Okay.
he's telling him to get in the spruce moose.
That's an interesting visual. Yeah. I mean, if you could just post that photo of yourself, you don't have to make an interview. You don't have to be present for quotes or comment. Just show us the Kleenex boxes, Jerry.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
show
He's
us the
just in a
Kleenex box.
bunch of front of his bunch of monitors and just crazy off his
Yeah.
rocker.
Um, I think that it's going to the Guardians thing. That is fascinating, and they're winning the series as we record right now. They are up 2 games to 1 on the Yankees. However, the Yankees look like they could win this game to even up the series here and take it to a game 5. uh, you and I grew up, and as most people, because the Yankees have been dominant forever.
Mhm.
But we were exposed to those '90s teams where they won. Just it was just winning, throwing money. Talk about throwing money at problems.
Yep.
That's us growing up. Watching the Yankees just pick apart, like everybody else's team was their farm system. They just
Right.
grabbed whatever they wanted, and they constructed these powerhouse teams year after year after year, and it was nauseating. And so, yeah, I want to be anti-Yankees, but I cannot. It's tough for me to put my fandom with Cleveland. They're an irritating team. They always have been for
Mhm.
years. I mean, since the '90s against the White Sox, and I feel like they've continued. Every few years it goes between Minnesota and Cleveland, and Kansas City is snuck in, but Cleveland now recently. And it's tough for me to put my fandom with the Guardians. I respect the way they play, to not have the superstars and the power numbers, but they play the game the right ways. Everybody says love Francona and what they've been able to get out of this team. They hustle, take extra bases. We saw it as a White Sox, fandom for a whole season, what they did against us. So I don't know. Are you somebody that will say, that's fine? That's okay. I'll root for the Guardians because I just can't absolutely stomach rooting for the Yankees.
I have nothing like that in my heart for to root for the Guardians. I just can't do it, and I don't understand. And if you fan how you want to fan, I'm not going to tell you you're
Sure, of
wrong.
course.
You do what you want, but this is just my personal opinion. I'm not the type of person like a lot of people do in college football. When it comes to the Rose Bowl, they'll root for who's ever in the Rose Bowl, whoever the Big Ten team is, right? If that happens to be not the championship game, the Rose Bowl that year. And they'll say, "Well, I'm an Iowa fan, but I want the Big Ten to be represent, or I want the Big Ten to win, so I'm going to root for Michigan because they're playing in the Rose Bowl." That doesn't make any. I can't root for another team, so there's nothing in me that would root for the Guardians against anybody. It doesn't really matter. And I was actually talking about this with my daughter tonight. I'm like, it's going to be really hard for me to root for the Astros
Of
when the
course.
Guardians play the Astros. And I think a little bit of it because the Astros have turned into this, they they wear the black hat now
Yeah,
in terms of baseball.
correct.
They're kind of the bad guy. When the Astros first started winning and playing well, and they went from 100 lost team and all this homegrown talent, it was fun to root for them, almost like the Patriots used to be way back in the day.
Oh, sure.
It
Yeah,
was fun to root for the Patriots, and I was known as Patriot Pat at
you
one
sure
Super Bowl
were.
party.
Yep.
And now it's like nobody wants to see the Patriots win. Nobody wants to see the Astros win. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be rooting for the Guardians if they happen to get past the Yankees and it's Astros Guardians. I'm going to be rooting for the Astros to win that series. Sorry if that makes me a bad person. I'm just
Yeah,
not doing
it's
it.
it's tough. I feel like I'm definitely going to be an NL fan in the World
Hmm.
Series for sure. But so the Yankees just tied up the series here. So
Okay.
there's going to be a game five. But yeah, I get the angle that I think a lot of Sox fans will go down of to just stick the White Sox organization's nose in it. That look at what the Guardians are doing. They've now advanced. Not only did they win the Central, they got out of one round. Now they're headed to the ALCS. I think that's where a lot of fans are going. They want the Sox brass to pay attention. Like, look at this. Look at what we have to watch. Look at what we have to stomach. And
Yeah.
I just don't want any success to come to them. I don't want
Yeah.
any confidence. No disrespect to the way that they've been able to handle their business. They beat us. They
Hmm.
absolutely beat us. But I just can't. I'm sorry. I
If it
can't be a
takes
fan of
this
them.
for the Sox organization to take notice, I mean, then what kind of a front
You know,
office are you?
you know what it kind of reminds me sometimes when people will be up in arms when Sox fans will project a lot of hate and dislike towards the Cubs, and it's like They're not even in our league, let alone our division. I don't mind, when you're playing the Cubs, like it's the Twins, it's the Tigers, it's the Royals, it's the Guardians. Those are the folks that we should be going after. It's the Cubs, like they pose no threat to us, and I have a different theory on that and a different viewpoint on it. But I get it. Again, fan how you want to fan. That's the same thing in this issue. Like Yankees, like don't like them, but they're in the AL East.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the Guardians that are in the Central that I have a problem with, and I
Yeah.
don't want to see success given to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to change our season if the Yankees win their 28th or whatever it is World Series championship, right? It doesn't change our lives, but it does, it changes a little bit if the Guardians were happen to be that team and we have to live with that and they're the defending champs. And then, we're going to be chasing them regardless. But, I just really have I don't want them to have any kind of success whatsoever.
Exactly. Whether or not the Guardians get to the ALCS or the World Series or win the World Series in 2022, the fact that they won the division is enough for Sox brass to say, okay, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
We need to make some changes here. We need to get back up on top. So that's just, my little bit on that. Managerial stuff, a lot of rumors, a lot of hearsay going on, depending on who you listen to. Nightingale had some stuff this past week that it was Bruce Bochy, Schilt, Washington are the front runners. And then you hear other accounts saying, well, the White Sox haven't even contacted Bruce Bochy yet. Or then to your point earlier, Ozzie Guillen's going to be named manager any day now. You got another person saying, well, Guillen hasn't even heard from the White Sox, so again, like, I don't know if anybody knows, have you striken a liken to any of the names? Again, I'm not a big name guy. Like, there are some refreshing names out there. There are also some folks that are just like, that kind of feels like that would just be a retread. We've been down that road before. I, of course, want a managerial search. I want an absolute search. Go out and wow me, find somebody who is hungry for the White Sox job, who wants this job, not just a managerial job. They want to be in the White Sox organization because they know what they can do, and they're ready. They're hungry. I don't know if you saw the quote from Joe Madden this past week, where Joe Madden's doing a whole speaking tour. He's got a new book out, and he's talking to any radio station, TV station he can that'll listen. And they're asking, if he's interested in managing again, and he's like, I'll talk to anybody. I'm sorry, but like, if I'm hearing that as the White Sox, it's like, oh, I don't know if I want that as my bar, of like, oh, I got a guy that's just going to talk to anybody. I want someone that says, I want to talk to the White Sox. I want that job, and they better be calling me, because I think I know what I can do for that organization.
Yeah. The Joe Madden stuff. I mean, listen, I don't know that I necessarily want Joe Madden. It has nothing to do with him managing on the north side and the success he had. He's been a successful baseball person the majority of his career when he was, with the Rays and then with the Cubs. And then, it didn't work out for him so much in Los Angeles. Maybe he's, quote unquote, lost his fastball in terms of being a manager these days. I don't know. But it didn't work out for him well. A lot of managers haven't been successful out in LA the last several years with that Angels team. So I don't know that I put that on him. All I know is that Joe Mann's been a winner for the majority of his career. Does he do things that we're going to probably point to if he was named our manager? You're going to have a lot of the same problems we have with La Russa in terms of inconsistency with the lineup. You're going to have, players playing, different positions maybe they're not accustomed to. Now, that was what we heard, complaints of Cubs fans of him when he was on the north side. But maybe he had a little bit more flexibility in terms of, people would actually play different positions. He may not have that flexibility with this White Sox team if it's, constructed in the same manner. But I wouldn't have a problem if Joe Mann's named the manager, if that's really who you are. He comes from outside the organization. I'm a big fan of anybody coming in from the outside, being able to look, the organization in the face and go, you hired me to be the manager. You hired me because you know that I'm having an opinion about what I want to be done here. This is how it needs to be done if this is going to work for us. So I'm okay if it's Joe Mann. I really have zero problem with it. But who I do like is Ron Washington.
Mm.
And for the reason of, and I just happened to be talking to Carmen DeFalco the other day in the hallways. And I asked him, I said, well, Carmen, what do you think
I love when
about?
you just casually name drop
Well,
different people.
whatever. Carm's a great guy. And he told me he likes Ron Washington because of the fact that his players love him. The infield guys love him, and he does the fundamental things the right way. And obviously he comes from from the organization that has been very successful in the Braves, and that has been a great, long-standing, tradition of winning down in Atlanta, for lack of better terms. And he brought two teams with Texas to the World Series, and that's who I'd like to see, because again, he comes from a lot of different in terms of backgrounds, and he is on the older side, but that's who intrigues me right now in terms of managers. What do you think?
Well, of Bochy, Schilt, or Washington, if we're to believe that those are the front runners from the White Sox whisperer, Bob Nightingale, then Washington is definitely the one that
Mm-hmm.
intrigues me the most. And with Atlanta getting bounced, I mean, does that speed things up? I don't know. I mean, there seems to be an unwritten rule in baseball, like you don't announce big things until after the World Series.
Right.
Now it sure seems like you can be continuing to interview people, because I believe Espada has been interviewed, and they have Sox have requested Washington to interview, and Espada, obviously the Houston Astros are still in the playoffs. Where you're going though with the being around a winning organization, that's where I'm coming from. Is through this managerial search, finding somebody that is progressive in thinking, is open minded, is willing to surround themselves with differing views to get better. Okay. And knows what a winning organization is all about. Not
Mm-hmm.
only like because they've read about it, but they've been involved in
Yep.
helping that organization, and they're ready, not only because they used to manage, but because maybe this will be their first managerial gig. They're really ready.
Yeah.
And I hope that comes through in the interview process. I feel like things are absolutely different now than they were before, if we're to believe what that process was like in 2020 when La Russa was hired. Maybe Willie Harris got an interview, and then that was it, and then it was just La Russa was brought in, and that was done.
It could have been. It seems like that was the case, Nick. And you mentioned Willie Harris, but I don't know that I want somebody that's a former player. I don't know that I need that anymore. That seems like too. This is the way we've done business before, and we're going to continue to do business this way. This organization needs new, fresh, different perspectives and ideas, and not so much. Again, going back to what Ozzy had said before, nobody knows this organization like me. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Ozzy, and you get a little bit of more leash because you actually brought a winner here once, and it was too far between that and 2008 and never again. So I don't know. I just like different perspective now, and I got to see something different, a little bit of a change. Not this is what we always do, and former player, and I just don't need that anymore with
Yeah.
this organization.
Different is good. Before we say goodbye, I do want to talk about Willie Harris, and I do want to talk about Ozzie Guillen, because as we record right now, 17 years ago, in 2005, the White Sox punched their World Series ticket. They just wrapped up beating the Angels and headed to the World Series. And in that ALCS, the Sox, of course, lost Game 1, and it was doom and gloom. Sky is falling. The magic is over. And then rattled off 4 straight wins and 4 straight complete games.
Hmm.
Garland and Burley and Garcia and Contreras. Something we'll never, ever see again, probably for the rest of our lives. That the only bullpen arm in the entire ALCS was Neil Kotz.
Yeah.
And, I know that I know there are folks that they're ready to move on from the 2005 team. And I get that. There's a lot of comparisons to the 85 Bears and so forth. But, and I was having this conversation with some folks. I lean into this remembering 2005 because it happened. We've got the memorabilia to prove it. We've got the t-shirts, the hats, the what have you. It actually happened. It wasn't a promise, or it wasn't a, what could have been. It wasn't hypotheticals. It really did exist. And I just find myself always nostalgic this time of year. And we're going to be getting into the actual, the anniversary of when the World Series was played very soon. It's a moment of that, and I think you can relate as diehard Sox fans, and in that time period of our lives, in our mid to late 20s, when the World Series happened and the Sox won. We were like at the apex of fandom, just and we were able to understand it and I think appreciate it, and that's what I want for younger fans. That's what we're hoping this core can deliver eventually.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason. I mean, yeah, you don't want to just you want more of it, right? But would you look past other memories in your life, like the birth of a child, of your wedding, your growing up, memories you have with your siblings? I mean, would somebody say, "Oh, move past those memories"? What do you keep talking about that time your kid was born? Like, listen, this was for me as a fan of this team. That was like one of the biggest moments of my life, especially at that time when you're talking about what age we were. And we were at our top physical conditioning at that time in our lives, Nick.
Absolutely.
We were just living on, pizza and beer. But no, there's always time for me to think back and be nostalgic, and hell, I was talking to somebody the other day. I heard somebody mention in the office, they're like, "Oh, I don't have a DVD player anymore. Who has a DVD player?" And I said, "I still have one, and the only reason I have it is so I can pop in the 2005 DVD set and watch the highlights, because that's what I'll do." I know what, I almost thought about doing it today. So, so no, you again, relive those memories. We have to celebrate them. It is what it is. I'd love to have more. I would love to be able to say, "Oh, it's time to celebrate the 2008, year because we won that year," or the 2012. Like, pick a year, any year. But it's not like that for us.
Something that the Yankees are able to
something
do.
like they're celebrating a different anniversary of a World Series every other year.
Yeah, a lot of reunions going on at that ballpark. I agree, and I just, it just will always be something I'm going to do. And even if there's a new World Series championship, and I hope there is, I think I'll still reflect on that 2005, because that was the first one, and what a fun team, magical team that was. And that really is why I think there is a lot of thirst for Ozzie Guillen. Like, let's take us back to when things were good, things were comfortable, things were fun. Can you please try to recapture that with this ball club? Show them the way. And I get that, you want to find comfort when things are rocky, and boy, what a rough season we just went through. And after going through this pain and this confusion, allow yourself some time to appreciate how great that 05 team was.
No doubt about it. And for us, it'll be telling our kids about it and how wonderful it was, and the stories that we have from that magical, October run.
Yeah. Pat, buddy, I have a feeling next time we talk, there will be more rumors and hearsay and hopefully some actualities that we may be able to speak about. But always a joy, always a pleasure talking White Sox with you, my friend.
Yeah, let's continue talking rumors, maybe making up rumors. I mean, before we go, I did, because
you've got
time into this.
You've got
I
some
want
accounts.
You to tell me if any of these are. I thought about these, and you tell me if any of these are good, and then I'll start putting out fake rumors under these fake Twitter handles.
I love it.
So
I love that you're giving all your secrets away.
I did. I'm giving then I'll have to change them up. But you tell me, give me the thumbs up, thumbs down on these. So what if I created a fake Twitter handle called Brown's Chicken and Pasqua?
A lot of people don't understand Brown's chicken. Was that just a Chicago thing?
I think it was just a Chicago thing, and then it changed to Brown's chicken and pasta.
Yes,
they added the pasta.
yes,
like,
they
oh
did.
man,
They
we
stuck
gotta
it in there.
we gotta figure out how we're gonna evolve into the next century.
That
here,
was
so.
a Sunday staple during Bears games. We would get, my father would go pick up Brown's chicken, the breaded mushrooms, all of the things, and then when they did incorporate pasta, the mustacholi. Absolutely. And I've tried to talk to folks that are not from the Chicago area. They're like, well, Browns, what are you talking about? I love that one. That one's great.
So that's good.
It's tough, man. You've said it. I don't know if
you're
going to be able to.
Let me try this one on for size. Okay. Yeah. I'll just give you this one. And then the next ones I'll save for another day. Okay. Let's see if you like this one.
Yeah.
588-2300 Ed Farmer.
You have put a lot of thought into this.
So very Chicago. I'll save the other three that I have for the next episode.
Yeah.
If you like those, but you like Brown's chicken and Pasqua better.
I think because I love Dan Pasqua. I was a Dan Pasqua fan. I believe No Batting Gloves, the Hammer was his nickname. That one, those are two really good fake Twitter I've got the scoop handles that I think you should incorporate. You really should just go with it, man. Go with it.
If I could figure out how to change that on my Twitter, somebody have to edit it.
Someone might just record after listening to this. That they might start that. Would you be okay if someone's listening to this episode and they just
that means they liked it. So go ahead.
I love it. I hope in the next few days I see a Brown's chicken and Pasqua asking to be my friend or follow me or whatever on Twitter. That's great. Well done, sir.
All right. Well, I'll leave it at that. Leave on a high
Save
note.
Those
George
others.
Costanza tells us that. So,
folks, really appreciate you spending some time with us as we ramble on about White Sox and baseball. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. It's free. Pass it along to other Sox fans in your life. Subscribe wherever, and also find us on YouTube. Just search Good Guys Talk Back. Subscribe to that, and we're on Twitter at Good Guys TB, and we've got a Facebook fan page. So for folks that are seemingly so anti-social media, we're just about everywhere you possibly can be. How's that for it?
That's irony.
For Pat Hester, I am Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.